you should take a moment to go onto a subreddit page related to Yu-Gi-Oh! You'll find many articles with seemingly never-ending debates over which arc is the best, what's the best card, what's the most OP monster combination, etc., etc. What I found so staggering while I was searching, though, was the amount of people that were criticizing and bashing the Waking the Dragons arc. Let me tell you up front, no, I'm not one of the haters behind this arc. I actually think that there's a lot that's great about it, but it does have a few weaknesses, and I'll explain those when we get to them, or I may just save them for the concluding segment. I really haven't decided, to be honest. At least not at the time of this video's recording anyway. Might change my mind down the line, who knows. But we aren't here to talk about critics, at least not yet anyway. Welcome to the Waking the Dragons arc, everyone. This story arc is one of the most divisive amongst the fanbase, with some absolutely loving it, and some absolutely despising it for being filler and not really counting it as part of the continuity. Before I get into this analysis, I have to say that, okay, yes, this arc is filler and I understand that, but what it doesn't have, as in an overall impact on the continuity of the series, it more than makes up for that with the tale of fighting one's pride and inner demons, as well as with an amazing amount of character development and personal motivations. According to the official Yu-Gi-Oh! Wiki page, this arc was created to bridge the gap between Battle City and the Pharaoh's Memories arc, so technically all of Season 4 is really just filler. Does that make it bad? Well, not really, but it depends on who you were to ask. Like I said before, people absolutely despise Season 4 for being entirely filler-based, and for having no impact on the series' continuity. But you have to take a step back, at least in my opinion, and take a look at the bigger picture. Hear me out. First of all, Battle City was an extremely dark story arc. Filled with dark images, incredibly mature topics, characters literally dying, at least in the original Japanese version, while in the dub it was toned down and only implied that they died, as well as just an overall depressing tone. When making a series like this, especially one that's serialized, you have to balance out the dark storylines with some humor and some fun, which Season 4 does in my opinion, although the first half of it is certainly darker and more mature than its second half. As always, you guys are free to disagree with me about this issue. Everyone has their own opinions on this. Then again, I've probably lost most of you by this point anyways, since most people just don't seem to care about this season. However, for those of you who are still here watching this, let's talk about the Waking the Dragons arc. Here we go. The arc begins with another recap. This time, the entirety of the Battle City tournament is covered. Again, a nice touch. Yugi is standing in front of the stone tablet, holding the 3 Egyptian god cards. But something seems a little off, as we hear a disembodied voice seemingly coming from the god cards themselves. Yugi holds the cards up to the tablet, which reacts accordingly, but it suddenly gets put on ice, no pun intended, and the god cards are also drained of their power. The group is then called outside, where a massive attack is underway, courtesy of, well, actual monsters flying around the city. They run across Rex and Weevil, who are in some kind of trance. Maybe they're sleepwalking or something, I don't know. Going back to the monster attacks, people are actually going against Kaiba Corp about it, and I'm assuming that they're filing lawsuits or something because there are literally millions of people and crowds pouring out of Kaiba Corp, demanding to know what caused the carnage. And honestly, it's about time that Kaiba got some negative press after all the illegal stuff he's done in the past. However, Kaiba Corp isn't responsible after all, so no dice. Oh well. The god cards are then swiped by 3 arrogant bikers, who promptly lead our heroes to a construction zone, with Yugi being challenged to a duel by a robed figure with the god cards at stake. Yugi agrees, and the duel commences. This starts a little bit of a trend in this arc, and features a key card known as the Seal of Orichalcos. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. Purists, you can comment if you want. Essentially, this card not only gives the user's monsters a power boost, but it also pretty much turns the duel into a shadow game. Only, well, without the shadows obviously, and with the loser's soul being swallowed up by a vortex in the sky that only seems to appear when it feels like it. Also, the seal allows the user to have a total of 10 monsters on the field, rather than the standard limitation of 5 at any one time. Mind you, the villains in this arc rarely use this tactic though, so it's not really a big deal. In addition, apparently the seal is unbreakable without a magic rock. This is one of the only gripes that I have with this mechanic, but I'll explain more as we go on. Anyway, Yugi's opponent summons Obelisk the Tormentor, turning the tables. Yugi's opponent starts to get dazed, with 3 bikers commenting that their leader, later dubbed as Darts, warned them not to mix the seal with the god cards. So it's kind of a double-edged sword in a way. Then again, I don't know what it is that's so dangerous about using the seal in conjunction with the god cards themselves. Yugi manages to destroy Obelisk and summons the Dark Magician. He then tries destroying the seal using Dust Tornado, but it doesn't work because apparently the seal is too powerful. What? Okay, this really doesn't make any sense when compared to the actual card game itself. What about the seal makes it so strong that it can't be destroyed? If I'm missing something here, please let me know in the comments. I'm trying to wrap my head around this whole thing. Yugi then summons the Dark Magician Girl due to a spell card he plays, with his opponent claiming that it isn't fair. Oh, and playing a card that apparently can't be destroyed by any conventional means is? Come on! But on the bright side, as irritating as it is, the seal itself does offer some really high stakes. I'd say that they're even up there with what Pegasus was doing back in Duelist Kingdom, but not quite on the level of Yami Merrick. There's nobody getting sent to the Shadow Realm here. Yugi defeats the robed figure, but the bikers don't hold up their end of the bargain, and they keep the god cards, stating that he has to defeat them all in order to get them back. Back in the city, Yugi and the others are met by Rebecca, a rather obscure character from way back in Season 1. Rebecca crushes on him instantly, with Taya getting jealous at this prospect. Ah, young love. Young, totally not creepy. Anime love. Yugi and the group then meet up with Professor Hawkins, Rebecca's grandfather, who provides a bunch of exposition about the city of Atlantis. With all this talk about Rebecca, I need to bring up something that, in my opinion, is actually hilarious, but extremely far-fetched. And no, not in the dog sort of way. Although my chihuahua does like to fetch, but only when my parents are home, sadly. Rebecca states some stuff about a hypothesis and suggestions, with the entire group being dumbfounded. Rebecca retaliates at this, screaming that she's in college. Okay. What? First off, she looks as if she's just hit puberty, meaning that at the most, she's maybe around 12 or 13 years old. But I mean, she barely looks like a teen. I'm almost 21, have a mustache, a growing beard, the whole 9 yards. And a 12 to 13-year-old wouldn't necessarily have the amount of intelligence shown by Rebecca here. Heck, I know I certainly didn't. Nevertheless, at the same time, why do I have a feeling that Rebecca is one of those kids that wanted the stories for Christmas? So apparently, in this anime fictional universe that I'm attempting to do a serious analysis on, I now have to write about a 12 to 13-year-old girl who's apparently in college. Wow, mind blown. Back at the villain's hideout, Darts takes the god cards and siphons off their energies, essentially rendering them useless. Yugi and Yami have a talk, and they hear a voice. They're then transported to a room with 3 dragons sealed in ice, or is it crystal? I couldn't really tell when I was watching. They're then met by the Dark Magician Girl, who gives us some more exposition about how both the human and the monster worlds are in danger, and that only the dragons can save them. Realizing what must be done, Yugi and Yami pull a stone out of one of the dragons, restoring it, and gaining the Timaeus card. Little known trivia note here, although the dragon cards were really liked by the fans, Konami has yet to release the 3 cards in a tin of any kind to the public, which is a shame, especially with what they ended up doing later on with them at the end. Also, another side note, when I was a kid, I actually had a magazine that listed the events of this arc. However, the name Timaeus was misspelled, leaving out the A, and as such, naive 7-year-old me thought that it was actually pronounced Timaeus rather than Timaeus. The odd but also kind of hilarious thing that I haven't heard anyone else bring up is that these 3 dragons essentially become the Exodia of this story. The villains are horrified whenever they're summoned, they're one-of-a-kind cards, and they have never been released to the public by Konami. However, that's not the case with Exodia, which has been released, it's just really hard to track down these days. I think it would be good for them to do that to satisfy fans like myself, and so that we could add them to our personal collections. Back in the real world, Yugi and his friends are attacked by monsters, with Yugi retaliating by summoning Timaeus, which is a sight to behold. Oh my gosh, I could go on for days as to how awesome these dragons are. It's amazing, and it's a treat every single time they're on screen. It never gets old. The start of the next episode is glorious, not in the serious way, but in the comical. The comedic timing here is priceless, and it helps alleviate some of the tension and prepare viewers for what's to come. Joey is constantly trying to get Timaeus to come out, but he later states that the card has to be handled with care, which leads to a scuffle between him and Tristan. I also laughed out loud at the comment made by the TV newscaster who's reporting on the attacks, when he says, "Are these events related to the monster attacks? More to come, but now the lottery numbers!" As if that outlet really didn't care about the public at large. That kind of speaks volumes about today's television media. Interesting. After watching a tape that they receive, the group decides that they have to go see Pegasus, in the hopes of getting a clue as to what's going on. Tristan then says a line that kinda has me scratching my head due to a lack of clarification. When Taya says that Pegasus doesn't have the Millennium Eye anymore, Tristan states that the last time they all saw Pegasus, he was a lot less creepy. Can someone explain in the comments what he's talking about here? Because from what I've gathered, the last time they saw Pegasus was in Duelist Kingdom, and he had the eye back then. Although, it may also just be a throwaway line, but still, if anyone knows, please comment below. Rex and Weevil are eavesdropping outside, and they decide to go see Pegasus as well, in the hopes of snatching some rare cards. Back at Darts' lair, more exposition is dropped, with the three bikers, Raphael, Alistair, and Valen respectively, going after Yugi, Seto, and Joey, as Darts needs to capture their souls in order to complete his plan. And Darts sends them to see Pegasus as well. So it looks like it's a race to get to Pegasus, apparently. Back in the city, Seto declares that Kaiba Corp isn't responsible for the monster sightings. Apparently, someone has bought out entire shares that are revealed to be over half of the company, in fact, which makes Kaiba mad something fierce. Pegasus suddenly comes on screen and makes fun of Kaiba for buying the shares, which only serves to make Kaiba even angrier. Seto decides to go after Pegasus as well. Man, how many people do they expect that plane to hold? Seto arrives and faces Pegasus. Pegasus is funny as always, which is always a treat. He has some great lines, like just before the duel starts, with this exchange between him and Seto.
Is it me, or are you always in a bad mood? We're about to play a friendly game here, so why don't you do yourself a favor and lighten up?
Pegasus plays with his Toon cards as usual, playing Toon World later on. Pegasus looks like he's about to quit when Alistair emerges as he was disguised as Kaiba, and he does a spot-on impression to boot. Man, how professional, it's really cool. Alistair then activates the seal, which I'm just going to use to dub the Seal of Orichalcos since it's a mouthful saying that name every time. And the real duel begins in my opinion, as I consider Seto's earlier duel with Pegasus as little more than a warm-up. Alistair states that Seto was a greedy little punk who was just as pathetic as his old man. We'll get more about this connection further down the line, but it's interesting that they introduce it here. Alistair then pulls out an action figure, explaining that it was his brother Mikey's, but that Gozaboyo took Mikey away from him, which to me implies that Mikey is dead. That's kind of a bummer. This news completely catches Seto by surprise, and he's left speechless. There's a comparison to be made here between the dub and the original Japanese in terms of Alistair's backstory. Let's compare them, shall we? In the original, the country Alistair lived in was a war zone, with Gozaboyo supplying weapons to both armies involved. Eventually, Mikey was taken and was killed when a tank that he was in exploded, causing Alistair to hate Seto for this. In the dub, it's a little more confusing, so bear with me as I read you this. Kaiba Corp bought the land from the city, and when the residents refused to leave, Gozaboyo forced them all out, with many having to steal food and dig tunnels to survive. The dub changes Mikey's death and only implies that he, as well as Alistair's mother, were both captured by the army. While I applaud 4Kids for this change, as no kid would be able to handle that type of story, at least not in the early 2000s, I kinda prefer the original a little more, because it's more believable in terms of Alistair's motives. However, something that I'm glad that they included in the dub is a revelation about this attack that comes right at the very end of the arc, which I will wait to reveal for anyone who hasn't seen it before. Alistair then states that since Kaiba Corp took his brother away from him, that he'll take Seto away from Mokuba, kind of a sick way of evening the odds. Seto releases the second dragon, later dubbed as the Fang of Critias, and summons it, with the ensuing battle leading the duel to a draw. Yugi and the others get carjacked, but they're saved by Maya on a motorcycle. They then get a ride from a local, Yugi speculates as to why Mai didn't stick around after saving them. They then enter a building and are trapped inside, with Joey being challenged to a duel by Mai, as it seems that she's joined forces with darts. Joey initially refuses to duel and tries to make Mai come to her senses, and after Mai plays the seal, he's afraid he'll win, as he'll lose her forever. Mai then states that the person they knew is gone, and that the old Mai was just holding this one back. Joey gets enraged by this, and duels his heart out. But Joey is basically wailed on despite the offense that he puts up, which is quite impressive. He nearly gives up, but Yugi talks him out of it, stating that he has to keep fighting and that Joey needs to show Mai what dueling is really about. Joey risks everything on a shuffle of 3 cards and luck, which Mai mocks, but luck hasn't let Joey down before, and he chooses correctly, allowing him to stay alive in the duel. Yugi and Joey are then sent to where the final dragon statue is, and Joey releases it, getting the card called the Claw of Hermos. Joey plays Hermos and gains a huge advantage, as he combines it with this Time Wizard. He drains Mai of most of her life points, and Mai starts to panic, stating that she won't go back there, which I'm assuming means that she doesn't want to go back to how she was before she joined forces with darts. Suddenly, Valen steps in and unlocks the seal with a rock fragment, which he refers to as a fragment of the Orichalcos stone. Okay, I get that, but they said a few episodes ago that the seal couldn't be broken by any means, but apparently this rock fragment breaks it? This makes no sense. But anyway, Valen unlocks the seal, creating a shockwave that knocks everyone over like bowling pins, before vanishing in a flash of light. Seto and Mokuba then show up, and they go upstairs to a room. Upon entering said room, they're confronted by a Pegasus hologram, who provides some more exposition and presents Yugi with a one-of-a-kind card, stating that he is their only hope. Once acquiring the card, Yugi convinces Seto to join them and Joey to stand up against darts. Seto, however, departs, and Rebecca returns home on horseback, only to see her grandfather being taken via helicopter by some guards. After the helicopter takes off, Professor Hawkins' entire house explodes, with Rebecca weeping. Rebecca finds Yugi and explains what happened, with Yugi vowing to find Professor Hawkins. She shows Yugi a card that the guards left behind, which contains a message from Raphael challenging the Pharaoh to a duel. Yugi insists on going alone and steals away on Rebecca's horse the next night. Rex and Weevil follow Yugi via a bicycle, and he arrives in Death Valley to face Raphael. Okay guys, I think I'll stop the review here. Sorry I'm leaving you guys in a cliffhanger right now, but I just wanted to get an introduction of the 3 dragon cards and establish both sides of the conflict here. Next time though, we'll get into the meat and potatoes of this arc, so to speak, as we examine the duel between the Pharaoh and Raphael, and analyze the severe repercussions of the Pharaoh's actions. Until then, stay tuned, God bless, and I'll see you guys later. Bye-bye.